When George Bush and Al Gore ran for president, they had 3 debates. Nobody said, what are you going to do when the twin trade towers come down, when the Pentagon's bombed? When the twin trade towers come down, when the Pentagon's bombed, when the Pentagon's bombed, when the Pentagon's bombed, when the Pentagon's bombed.
I want you all to know, it can't go any louder. I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
The nation sends its love
Harry,
and compassion to everybody who is here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
Snag. I'm a snag. I'm a snag. I'm a snag. I'm a slithery little sneaky snag.
This feat of bringing a building straight down onto its own footprint requires such skill that only a handful of demolition companies in the world will attempt it. Well, what the heck? Just put a few random fires in there, maybe some damage, and you saw the towers, they just fall straight down. And you better patent that one real quick before somebody else thinks about it. You know, just some random fires in the building, hey, it'll come straight down, it's great. You know, quit paying these companies all this money.
We heard the noise associated with an implosion.
We heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse before us.
We heard a loud explosion, and at that point, Building 2 was collapsing.
At that point, we heard a large boom. I looked up and just saw the building coming at us.
Do you know if it was an explosion or if it was a building collapse?
To me, it sounded like an explosion.
There was another major explosion. The building itself, literally the top of it came down.
What? And he looked at me and asked me, was that a bomb? And I said, I don't know. I went outside. It was like a gust of wind that knocked me over. There was something, the windows blew out.
And there was a loud explosion and the elevator dropped. And when the elevator dropped, was a lot of debris and cables falling on top of the elevator. And when the elevator finally stopped, they had an explosion that bring the doors inside the elevator. And I'm sure that was broke my leg.
The impact of the explosion, of whatever happened, it threw me to the floor, and that's when everything started happening. And then all of a sudden, it happened all over again. I just know something else hit us to the floor. Right in the basement, you felt it. Walls were caving in, everything that was going on. You just knew it was something big. I mean, I know of people that got killed in the basement. I know of people that got broken legs in the basement. People that got reconstructive surgery because the walls hit them in the face.
A building cannot do free fall with 40,000 tons of structural steel in its structural system.
This is rather incredible. You cannot have a building falling at free fall, which means not one of those columns gave any resistance.
The building we are discussing is, of course, the Solomon Brothers building in downtown Manhattan, also known as World Trade Center 7 or just Building 7. Constructed in 1987, it was a modern steel-framed high-rise. It was a 47-story, Class A, fully fire-protected structure with reinforced concrete floors, built around 82 solid steel structural columns rooted into the Manhattan bedrock. 58 perimeter and 24 core columns, it stood an impressive 610 feet tall. As a highly fire-protected structure, it had 3-hour fire resistance ratings for all the columns and 2-hour fire resistance ratings for the floor assemblies. Here, for contrast, you can see a construction worker walking next to one of the huge columns. The design was so robust that prospective tenants were offered the option of removing entire floors to create high bays, which was done higher up in the building.
But we really couldn't see a lot of damage from this angle, from the north side of the structures. That's why everybody was so surprised when all of a sudden it just fell.
This building's destruction was investigated by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. The simple observation of freefall should have been the starting point for their investigation. They recognised the huge implications of what freefall indicated.
A free fall time would be an object that has no structural components below it.
But they refused to acknowledge it in their investigation.
Building number 7 descended in free fall for the first 100 feet, which means that there was absolutely no resistance to the descent whatsoever.
So all of the columns really needed to be severed at the same time.
The symmetry is the smoking gun.
NIST has admitted it went into free fall for 8 stories.
You don't need to be an engineer or an architect to see what happened to those buildings.
Dus dit is controlled demolition. Zeker weten. Zeker weten.
What I saw, it was a classic implosion. The center of the core, the penthouse area, starts to move first, and then the building follows along with it.
NIST excluded the document from FEMA in Appendix C that documented the evidence of melting steel.
In an office fire, you cannot generate enough heat to melt steel.
There were these iron microspheres present in all of the dust samples. They needed to have been formed in extremely high temperatures.
All the characteristics of the microspheres, along with what I see in the attack of the beams that were actually found, tell me that thermite was involved in melting those steel beams.
In the dust, what we have found is a modern version of thermite, which we call nanothermite.
NIST concedes that they found no evidence for explosives. So then we asked them, well, did you look? And they said, no, we did not look for explosives or residues of explosives.
And in fact, the evidence is overwhelming that these red-grade crystals are very high-temperature incendiaries.
And we have watched as scientific integrity has been undermined and scientific research politicized in an effort to advance predetermined ideological agendas.
If this is a crime, I think everybody agrees it's a crime. Evidence was removed from the scene of the crime. You can't do science when you are deprived of the evidence and when your hypothesis is the least valid instead of the most likely. When the most likely hypothesis in the case of Building 7 wasn't even mentioned. This is not science.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
It jumped up a notch.
It did, didn't it?
When considered objectively from a professional firefighter's point of view, the office fires in Building 7 could have been easily controlled and extinguished relatively safely, especially if they'd been attacked early in the day, as intended by the fire crews in the building before they were ordered to evacuate. The main fires in 7 had developed only on a handful of lower floors, the most visible being on floors 7 and 8 plus floors 12 and 13. There were other small fires on higher floors, but they'd burned themselves out. The fire on the 12th floor, in the northeast corner, is said to have caused a girder in the 13th flooring assembly to move off its seat, resulting in the building's complete failure and collapse. However, there are many problems with this theory. Debris from the collapse of the North Tower at 10:28 a.m. is officially suggested as the most likely source of ignition, but there are conflicting witness reports from inside the building before this time of smoke, heat, and explosions.
That's when the first tower fell. When they started running, the first tower was coming down. I had no way of knowing that. Then I saw them come back. Now I saw them come back with more concern on their faces. And then they ran away again. The second tower fell. All this time, I'm hearing all type of explosions. All this time, I'm hearing explosions.
Mr. Hess!
That's Mr. Hess's corporation counsel.
What floor? What?
8th floor.
8th floor, 7 World Trade. 7. That's
emotional damage.
Video cameras caught trucks arriving at the World Trade Center from about August 23rd until every night until about September 2nd, September 3rd. And the trucks were arriving at about 3 o'clock in the morning when everybody else had left the building, including the janitorial trucks. Something was brought into that building that would help with the detonation. There may have been work done on the detonation before. It may have been going on for months, but whatever they needed at the very end, they came and brought in that 10-day period.
Nobody said, what are you going to do when the twin trade towers come down, when the Pentagon's bombed?
We have very different damage patterns from the airplane, very different damage patterns from the fires in each case, but we have complete identical destruction from the top all the way down at near free fall acceleration. Once again, 80,000 tons of structural steel has been taken away almost as fast as a bowling ball falling down from the sky. It doesn't slow down. In other words, it is accelerating at 2/3 of free fall acceleration as identified by physicists. We have upward, outward arching streamers, a geometry of fireworks, freely flying structural steel sections weighing 4 and 8 tons, laterally ejected out of the towers, landing 600 feet in every direction, destroying many of the skyscrapers around them and the winter gardens over 600 feet away. They're trailed by thick white smoke clouds. Steel beams are not flammable in office fire conditions, or jet fuel for that matter. Again, jet fuel burns at 600 degrees Fahrenheit. So what is causing the ends of these steel beams to trail thick white smoke clouds, indicating that they are indeed on fire? Well, we saw the evidence of that earlier in thermite. We're told that the upper part destroyed the lower part, but none of these videos show the upper part destroying the lower part of the building. It's been destroyed in itself in the first 3 seconds, as we show in our webinar on this topic at richardgage911.org. But what we see is after that destruction, thousands of individual explosions, which we zoom in on when we have more time, underneath the canopy of this destruction. Symmetrically, just like the firefighters described, 186 firefighters identified by Professor Graham McQueen orally on tape in 12,000 pages of testimony, which he went through to find that 180 of them are describing explosions, sounds of explosions, seeing flashes of light, many of them. And They're all on record, but the city wouldn't release this information until 2005 when they were forced to by the New York Court State of Appeals in a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit.
Because apparently you're spinning around, and apparently every time you get dizzy, that's all you do is get dizzy.
You want to call your mother or something?
Right now.
Bomb in the building, start clearing out. Sorry, you said there's a bomb? What'd you say? A bomb in the building, start clearing out. Got it.
Big boom, come down the steps, everything fine till we got to the basement, and then everything just fell in. I got trapped on there with another guy, crawled out, kept getting hit in the head, bags floated around, finally we clawed our way out over the rubble.
Yeah.
Come on, Don.
You did all right.
All right, way to be, Tom, let's go.
I've never been on live television before, but apparently sometimes I don't watch the news because I'm a kid, and apparently Grandpa just gives me the remote after we watch the Powerball.
I think the very kindest thing that we can say about George W. Bush and all the people in the U.S. government that have been involved in this massive cover-up, the very kindest thing we can say is that they were aware of the impending attacks and let them happen.
Bowman was voicing a theory that became known as lie hop, let it happen on purpose. Loose change implied what a lot of people were coming to believe, that the government didn't just allow 9/11, but that it orchestrated it, made it happen on purpose, or MIHOP.
Emotional damage.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be.
When we are successful, and we will be.
We have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
I go to church. I'm a Christian. You don't know me. You're not God.
In September of 2000, 1 year before 9/11, a think tank called the Project for a New American Century, consisting of future Bush administration officials Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Scooter Libby, Paul Wolfowitz, and media icon Bill Kristol, released a document called Rebuilding America's Defenses. They envisioned the expansion of U.S. military dominance on land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace. They envisioned multiple simultaneous large-scale wars. But they complained that the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor.
You have energy companies that profit when there's an energy crisis, military industrial complex that profits when it's a war, pharmaceutical companies that profit when there's a pandemic. You're creating the necessity for ongoing crisis.
Yes.
If the elites in the society benefit from situations that are detrimental to everybody else, that's what reality is going to become. That's what reality has become.
The media has played an important role in shaping the official story, even to this day. The idea that the buildings fell because of planes and fire was instilled in the public's conscience early and often on 9/11, and it started before any buildings fell.
And that perhaps they're buckling under the force of the collision or the hole that's resulted from these two planes.
My sense is that just one, the velocity of the plane and the fact that you have a plane filled with fuel hitting that building that burned.
So structural damage, as you had suggested, probably led to this building going down.
We are seeing...
It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks.
And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
And now mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
And now we are told that there's a fire there and that building may collapse as well as you can.
Pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief.
That you
Let's say your local TV news breaks in with a report of a car accident at the corner of Main and First Avenue because a car blew out a tire, swerved into a tanker truck, and it exploded. Now your office is at that corner, so you go out and look, but everything looks fine. You flip stations and other stations are reporting it too, using different wire services even. As you stare out the window wondering where there's another Main and First Avenue, a car drives into a parked gas truck and it explodes. Have you witnessed a miracle or a staged event? If what I was finding were mistakes in a massive ruse, then the sheer boldness and size of it alone is why I never saw it before.
Is this real life? Why is this happening to me?
Twin towers were built with a structural redundancy of 3 to 5 times the weight they were meant to support.
This structure was capable of holding 3 to 5 times the weight.
These buildings are built
to handle several times the load above them. So those perimeter columns could handle 5 times the load above them, and the core columns could handle 3 times the load above them.
In addressing the solidity of the Twin Towers, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology stated that its 244 perimeter columns made it one of the most redundant and one of the most resilient skyscrapers. On the same subject, the architectural firm of Roth & Sons wrote, "The building as designed is 16 times stiffer than a conventional structure. The Vierendeel trusses would be so effective, according to the engineer's calculations, that all the columns on one side of a tower could be cut, as well as the 2 corners and several columns on the adjacent sides, and the tower would still be strong enough to withstand a 100-mile-per-hour wind." John Skilling, the structural engineer who designed the Twin Towers, stated, "Live loads on these perimeter columns can be increased more than 2,000% before failure occurs." In particular, the Twin Towers were designed to sustain the impact of a large airliner traveling at 600 miles per hour and still remain standing. Interviewed in 1993 by the Seattle Times, John Skilling stated, "We looked at every possible thing we could think of that could happen to the buildings, even to the extent of an airplane hitting the side."
It actually begins to fall over. So if it's falling over at 22 degrees, we have asymmetrical loading onto the building below from this building, which is falling off the building. Top part of the building is falling off. And we have asymmetrical damage from the planes. We have asymmetrical damage from the fires. How in the world do we get complete symmetrical damage, just like the firefighters described, all the way around like a belt, all these explosions? It's a non sequitur. It makes no sense. You would expect a completely different set of destruction or collapse destruction from if it were a real collapse. But no, you get this. And now we zoom in to the lower leading corner caught by this videographer. What are we looking at? I'm seeing about a dozen independent explosions in this looped video. And yes, they are independent explosions. And are they every floor? It's actually quite difficult to tell because the striations are vertically instead of horizontally.
Sure.
So some people think it's every 3rd floor. So we'd have to speculate. But what we don't have to speculate on is that we are indeed looking at explosions, at least a dozen here. So they're individually pre-placed explosions. This is not a nuclear weapon going off. Let's clarify that for everybody, because that is a theory out there which has to not show you these individual explosions, which must be pre-placed and detonated floor by floor, or every 3rd floor by every 3rd floor.
Isaacs, for example, has more recently said, "I know 9/11 was an inside job. The police know it's an inside job, and the firemen know it too. But you have not heard this on the nightly news."
Never before in the history of the world has a steel building collapsed due to fire.
I have not seen, until recently, a protected steel structure that has collapsed in a fire.
True infernos have raged hot and long in steel-framed buildings, but not one of the buildings ever came down. In 1975, the World Trade Center's North Tower suffered a nighttime fire that flamed for 3 hours, spreading vertically from floor to floor. It burned twice as long as the fires of 9/11 without even a hint of a building collapse. In February 2005, the Windsor Tower in Madrid, a skyscraper undergoing reconstruction, sustained a 20-hour fire. This is what was left, a standing building strong enough to support a crane. Compare a 20-hour inferno to 90 minutes of smoke.
A CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels and generals in their hideout. This is a CNN reporter with a camera crew. And he came out and told everybody, within 3 weeks, Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and Israel. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. And whatever is going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it. When in hell are all you people going to wake up?
Where bonbons play. Let's hope Osama bin Laden doesn't know show tunes. God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it. How many people does he need? How many boys? How many girls? Wait and see!
You were booked on the flight from Boston that hit the South Tower. And you didn't get on it.
Was late. I missed it. Coincidences do happen. I was booked on the first flight that hit the tower and...
Alrighty then. Huh? Mayday!
A small demonstration of our sinister strength should convince the world of our supreme power.
The Legion of Doom is about to begin its reign of terror.
Remember those Twin Towers? Yeah, what about them? I don't think they're gonna be so tall anymore.
Force field is shielding the warplane. It's getting through.
We will now strike at the heart of American defense and destroy the Pentagon.